Welcome everyone to the Ablo Show. I'm Ablo, and over here on the Ablo Show, we talk about movies, comics, TV series, whatever gets the nerd juices flowing. And today, we're going to be talking about Wolverine for this show that I'm calling Who's That Character? Like Who's That Pokemon from Pokemon? Well, this is Who's That Character. So, let's start with Wolverine. Okay, who is Wolverine? Well, Wolverine was born James Howlett in Canada during the late like 1880s. From he was born to a rich family of farm owners, right? To Elizabeth and John Howlett. Although it was suspected that he was the legitimate son of the groundskeeper. Okay, now there was a bit of chicanery with this because the groundskeeper was actually trying to. If you watch the Wolverine Origins movie, the groundskeeper was trying to rape. Um, well, not well. The original story is that he was trying to rape Elizabeth, and James himself, like Wolverine, he was not having it. So he killed Wolverine. He killed the groundskeeper with with his bone claws. Okay, that emerged from his hands, showing that his mutation had manifested. He was pretty young at this point, and after that, he started living in different places, different colonies at the time, and then he like apparently lived with wolves. He lived with wolves, and it kind of makes sense if you look at him. He's pretty angry and pretty stubborn and mean. And he participated in a lot of wars while he was growing up. He was in like every war in the last century, and in the last one, not the last one, in about like 1980s. I'll say 1980s just to keep it like to keep it organized in your head canon. Weapon X took him and realized that he had this mutation in which like he could regenerate his body. And using this, they thought it would be much easier for him to survive an experiment in which they laced your bones with a metal called adamantium, which like forcibly fused your bones to make them much stronger and harder than they already were. Which essentially adamantium is indestructible, so it made his bones indestructible, which was pretty cool. Now, the Canadian guy, he escaped Weapon X because there was like, well, he can't be a part of that. And he also like, I think he felt a little remorse. He felt a little bad that they did this to him because they also stole his old memories. They took away his memories, and that became an issue. That became an issue to stay with them because how could they do this to him, right? Now, he also joined the Canadian government's Department H, where he became Wolverine, which was like one of Canada's first superheroes. And he fought Hulk and the Wendigo. That was his first appearance where he fought Hulk and the Wendigo monster. Where yeah, he appeared first in Hulk, and then from then on he appeared in the X-Men. He was part of a team. He was part of the X-Men. That's what we saw first, but apparently before he was part of the X-Men, he was part of the Alpha Flight. Alpha Flight was another team that existed in Canada, that was like the X-Men for Canada, but more like the Avengers for Canada. Yeah, they had mutant powers and they was pretty strong, and Marvel tried to make them grow. It was impossible. Now, what makes this character cool? Okay, what makes this character cool is really like to be. Let's start from his popularity. He was wildly popular. Excuse the pun. Wilderness. Wilderness and Wolverine, wild, and was usually used to sell other books like Spidey. Because if you put Spidey in a book, that book was gonna sell. If you put Wolverine in that book in the '90s, it would have sold like gangbusters. So Wolverine was really big in the '90s and the '80s, and he was like there was like a boom of Wolverine during that time. And I think the thing that really gets to people is that Wolverine looks like the epitome of what the ideal man looks like. I mean, to keep up with Wolverine, DC had to make Lobo. Like, just to compete with Wolverine, they had to make the Zarkanian character who killed his whole race just to keep up with Wolverine. I mean, Jesus, that's pretty cool to me that you're that big that they have to go to those lengths. I think another thing that's pretty cool is Wolverine, because he came up in the 90s and the 80s. He's one of the only ones where it was okay for him to be kind of like he was one of in the 90s and 80s. They had this weird boom of really dark stories, and Wolverine was kind of one of those really. It was kind of one of those propellants for the dark stories, and that made him very cool in a sense because of how grandiose it was, not grandiose, how Wolverine stories came with a bit of darker tone and a bit of like melancholy sometimes because the guy had lost his memories, for God's sakes. He didn't know where he came from. He was raised by wolves, you know. His origin story alone is like way deeper than anything I've ever read. Um he's also like the only person in the whole X-Men movie franchise to get a what is this? To get a movie series of his own. The three Wolverine movies. Although to me, there's two bad ones and there's one good one. I don't know how they thought it would work, but Old Man Logan, at least we got that one. You know. I don't know why they continued it, but Old Man Logan was still pretty good, and I think a good chunk of why his popularity skyrocketed in the 2000s was because well, Hugh Jackman was playing him, and Hugh Jackman was the perfect person to play Wolverine. And also, Wolverine's charisma just comes off of him; it just drips charisma, and that's pretty cool. Now, what are his powers? What can Wolverine do? What can Wolverine do? His main power is that he can regenerate. Is like his whole body just regenerates from anywhere, from like the tiniest little cut to like having your whole arm be cut off. He can regenerate in seconds like that. And that comes into very much like very dark, bloody stories because Wolverine's not going to die and he's not going to get killed, but he can show a lot of blood, and that's really cool to see. And another power he has is he has super senses. He can touch, he can hear, he can smell, he can taste, he can see much better than everybody else. And that I think that comes to him be I think that comes a little bit to him being more like to being an animal, because that's I wouldn't count it as a power, but I do recognize that being an animal like Wolverine is makes him it's a strength. Being an animal is a strength. Um, Now another power, as I've mentioned, is the adamantium laced endoskeleton, which if for somehow somebody was able to cut right through Wolverine's like Wolverine's muscles, like they take a sword and they cut right through his muscles and all his organs. They're gonna touch that part of his body which is bone, and it's gonna that whatever that is that's cutting him, whatever metal that is, it doesn't matter what it is, it's not gonna survive against adamantium. Adamantium is one of the strongest metals in on Earth in the Marvel universe Earth. Okay, I'm not gonna say that in the universe because we've explored it, but I feel as if there's some more metals in the universe that can maybe cut adamantium. There is a metal out there that can stop Wolverine's healing factor. Not a metal, but a sword, the Muramasa blade, and the Muramasa blade, which is which has some magical bullshit in it, can stop the healing factor and like render your healing factor useless. So anywhere that you're cut will be like you can't grow that part back. And that's really the only way you're gonna write Wolverine, unless you're gonna write him being dunked in adamantium, like being dunked in like melted at adamantium, and then like frozen for half a decade. It wasn't half a decade, like, oh yeah, it's been 5 years. No. Well, now what makes Wolverine cool? Like I said, he is he is the epitome of what men should look like. That was at least the thought process in the 90s. He is big, hairy. Well, he's not that big. Actually, Wolverine's pretty tiny, but he is like hairy, muscly. He is like, yeah. He was always seen with a nice giant stogie. He was always seen with a nice, huge cigar in his hands. He has these like claws coming out of him, and it was just cool to see those claws, even. And that's really the long and short of it. What would I rate Wolverine out of 10? I would rate, I would rate him an 8.9, just because Wolverine's popularity has made him so popular that Marvel wants him back, but at the same time, they're not willing to write. Not a lot of people can write good stories with Wolverine. Like there is good stories with Wolverine, don't get me wrong, but like Marvel really tries to hammer in Wolverine. It's I'm gonna say the Deadpool problem, where there's too much Deadpool and there's not enough good Deadpool. In the comics, there's a lot of Deadpool, but there's not enough good Deadpool. And Deadpool, I can only take in short doses. Wolverine, at least, I can take a little bit here and there in the X Men. And yeah, so I would rate him out of 10 an 8.9. And that's just because that they try to hammer in Wolverine all the time. He should be like a commodity, which I think. But whatever, that's only me. Tell me what you think down in the comments. Tell me what you like about Wolverine, what you enjoy about him, and like, subscribe, and thank you for watching. Out.